Sri Balaji and friends. Thank you, Seshadri, for that introduction, and Mr. Madhu for your invitation to come and address the club today. It's really an honor to be speaking to the Rotary Club of Madras South. I must congratulate Rotarian Madhu for the excellent work that he does and his recent book release, Windows to the World, because I have nothing but admiration for somebody who's been at this job so consistently and who brings such a professional touch to what he does. And also, Mr. Madhu is one person whose mails I never delete, because he picks out, a collection of wonderful articles and shares them with friends, and they're all so relevant, they're so current and so useful that it's really makes for very good reading, and one doesn't have the heart to delete them at all. So that said, I will go on now to my topic, the lost lakes of Chennai. For a long time there's been a standing joke that in Madras the weather is only hot. There are only 3 seasons in Madras, hot, hotter and hottest, and that being a rain shadow area, we hardly get any rain. That was what we believed for a very, very long time. And then November 2015 happened. It rained in sheets and torrents for 3 days continuously, and we all know the aftermath of that, floods everywhere, and normal life was thrown completely out of gear. There were several reasons for this. Of course, release of the water from Chembrambakam, but also there were other factors that contributed to the mess that we landed ourselves in, and that was the brutalizing and the compromising of all our water bodies. If you ask me how many water bodies are there in Chennai, there are varying numbers that I can quote. About 2 decades ago, the Center for Environment and Water Engineering in IIT did a study, and they estimated that there were about 650 water bodies in Chennai, and half of them were south of the Adiyar. And now in the recent master plan, it's been found that just a fraction of those lakes remain. If you take 650 and half of that is 325, and you just have a mere fraction of it. Almost all the lakes, half of the lakes have completely disappeared. Mr. Muthaya in another article which he wrote recently said about 100 years ago there were 300 water bodies, and now there's just a fraction. Mr. Suresh, Dr. Suresh, convener of, I'm just giving you the numbers to give you an idea of the picture that we get from various sources. Dr. Suresh, who was formerly the convener of INTAC, said that he thinks that there are only 60 major lakes. It could be a little more or a little less, but the bottom line is that we have lost several of our lakes, and the National Institute of Disaster Management, which did a lot of work in the aftermath of floods, estimates that there are about 29 major lakes. Now, the using up of lakes for development and housing didn't start in recent times. It's happened even in the British times. There was this Mambalam Mylapore tank, and then from the south of the Mambalam Mylapore tank, you had a long tank which ran for about 6 kilometers. It extended all the way up to Nungambakam, the western side of the Nungambakam tank, into which it flowed. But then what happened was in the 1930s, when the demand for land and housing became more acute, about 1,600 acres of that land was freed up to create what we now call as T Nagar. The Mailapo stretch of that tank, that is from Gemini Studios right up to Adyar, was where the boat club used to have its annual regattas. And somewhere around the vicinity of Cathedral Garden Road was where the boathouse was. And usually top government officials used to occupy that area, and they used to allow their houses to be used as a boathouse, and the governor and his entourage used to occupy that boathouse and watch the finishes of that race. But when this land had to be freed up for housing, they breached the tank and the waters were let into the Adyar river. Now if you come down to the Nungambakam tank, a few years later, land was needed for the Loyola College. And so about 54 acres of the Nungambakam tank went to provide space for the Loyola College. And somewhere around the 70s, the last vestiges of the Nungambakam tank disappeared and went to provide space for Valluvar Kota. There were a chain of tanks in Vyasapadi, about more than about 18 tanks in Vyasapadi, and they have all, including the Kodungiyu train, and they've all disappeared when the government proposed the Vyasapadi industrial scheme, and also created a lot of housing in the Vyasapadi area. If you take the Madurai Lake, it was 125 acres at one point in time. It's now down to almost 1/5 of that former size, So whether it's Kotur, the Kotur tank, or the Peruvallur tank in Perambur, or Kalikundram in Taramani, or Medavakam in Kelly's, all these tanks have had to provide, give way and provide for the demand for housing and development and what have you. So this is a phenomenon that started very, very long back, that lakes had to be freed up at some point in time for development or housing. So after the rains and the floods, it was a moment of epiphany for me, and I learned that had we had all of our lakes today, that kind of a disaster could have been averted, because without the lakes there was nowhere for the water to flow into, and therefore it just stayed on the surface and eventually found, water finds its own outlet, and that's it finally found its own route to take. So after the floods, I decided that I would go down and track and document as many lakes as I could in the city. So I crisscrossed the city for several weeks, right from the South Madras Peri area near Tirunirmalai to the other areas in the vicinity, Kirikattalai and Sithalapakam, and then the Tirisulam area, which is really, the Tirisulam area is like it's small, but it's like an oasis in the middle of the Grand Canyon. Believe you me, because there are stone quarries there, and there's so much of dust and rocks and all of that. The terrain is very, very different, and there's a lot of migrant workers in that area. And in the midst of all this quarry, there is a little oasis called the Tirisulam area. So I visited that, and then I went to the Pallikarnai marsh, and then I traveled all the way to Ambattur, where you have, fortunately we still have some lakes, the Koratur, the Ayapakam area, and then Madavaram. There are a lot of geels and a lot of streams and kolams in Madavaram. Avadi has its fair share of lakes, and the beautiful Kovil Padagai tank, and Ainavaram has a few, and Porur which supplies drinking water. There's a very large lake in Porur. So I went and actually talked to people and spotted about 30 to 40 lakes over a period of 4 weeks. And it was a tremendous experience. Most people actually don't even know the existence of lakes in their area, and but for GPS and but for Google Earth, I don't think I could have discovered half the lakes I did, because they would just drive you off on a wild goose chase. Because finding the Tirisulam area was such a difficult task, because they asked me in a walking area, Pakanama, in a housing area, Roypeta area. These are the kind of names that people ask. Nowadays people associate areas with either a walkway or a housing board tenement. So these are the names that people give: housing board area or walking area, or and even in Avadi, even though Google Earth showed me exactly where it was, Ramnagar, Vivekananda Nagar and other nagars around it, and the area right in the middle, people just could not tell you where the nagars were or where the area was. It was really so difficult. And the most telling commentary was when I went looking for the Vyasarpad area. I wanted to know where it was. So I drove down Cook's Road, and then I asked one of the workers who was working in a huge construction site, and I said, can you tell me Vyasarpad area inge enga sir irukku? And he said, area, idha area, he said, pointing to that huge that monstrosity that was coming up. So all the areas have disappeared like that, and we really have we've just forgotten what kind of a role they play in our ecosystem. If you ask me why areas, why do we need lakes, and how are they important in the general scheme of things, lakes confer much more benefits than we actually know. For one, they were a source of irrigation. Many of the areas in the suburbs, the lakes in the suburbs, are still used for irrigation. And they are a definite way of mitigating floods, because all the water collects into that. Mr. Shekhar Raghavan of the Rainwater Center says that it's because the lakes have disappeared that the rainwater seems to have just stagnated on the surface without knowing, without finding any kind of outlet. So during times of floods, lakes definitely help to mitigate floods and prevent inundation in all the surrounding areas. And also they offer considerable storage. Now it's estimated that the total storage capacity in our major reservoirs is about 11,000 million cubic feet. And 19 of our major lakes, if they are rehabilitated and restored, can offer us 1,000 million cubic feet of water. Now, do you think that's something to talk about or not? I mean, when Bangalore was burning last week, and every time you mention Kaveri or Krishna or anything, people just go berserk. I think every single drop of water counts. 2 days ago, I was reading an article by Nandan Nilekani's wife, Rohini Nilekani, in which she says the solution is really to become a low water economy. Because that is really the way to go if we are to find a way out of this, because the demand is too much and we have too little water to go around. So apart from mitigating floods, they definitely, if rehabilitated and restored, can add to the water that is available at present. Also, there is a very interesting benefit that lakes confer, and that is for every 1 meter head of water that is there in the lake, it keeps away seawater from entering into the land. There is a lateral push to the extent of 40 meters. So just imagine, if we didn't have our lakes, we would have seawater more freely entering, our ground sources, and then we would, already we are talking about desalination plants, which are clearly not feasible, given the cost and all the other kind of problems that they come with. So just to keep out the seawater, we have to preserve our lakes. So there are, I think, very good reasons why we should care for our lakes much more than we do at present, because they also help to recharge the groundwater in a city that's being increasingly concretized. You see, you have concrete everywhere. There's hardly any, ground that is open where water can permeate. Some of the best roads have been relaid, and they're all granite and marble and stuff like that. And there is just no water, no provision for water to permeate even on the sidewalks. So in an increasingly concretized city, we definitely need our lakes, because they will help to recharge the ground water, and we know that the groundwater is depleting very, very fast. Where you used to get water at 60 feet, was it, a few years ago? Now you can't think of what is the current depth to which you, sorry? 500? 500 is good, I think. Anybody who's drilled a borewell deeper than that? I would have thought it would have gone much deeper than 500 feet. So we are tapping deeper and deeper and deeper to get any kind of, to access any kind of water. So these are some of the reasons why we need to preserve our lakes without any delay. But lakes have been, as I told you, either by the government or land sharks, or apologies to Ashama. Oops. I've said something wrong. I'm so sorry. So like I said, it's the people who are after land, and sometimes government and panchayat, and all of these people gang up together and brutalize our lakes. And how is this happening? Well, as I went around, I found that this has been happening in a very, there is a strategy to it. First they start building around the lakes, around the lake beds. And then when there's not too much of a protest, they go in for the kill, and then level up the ground and start building over it. Just after the floods, even within 1 month after the floods, I could see brand new constructions coming on the lake, up on the lake beds in Avadi. And there was a policeman right there keeping watch. I don't know what he was watching over, but nobody seems to have protested. So that is how the people start building around the lakes, and then they move in, and they start building over the lakes. And then there are encroachers. In the Korattur area, I saw a lady with her family right by the lake bed, and her husband was not at home, and she had lost one of her young children to some kind of disease after the floods, some kind of waterborne disease after the floods. And she invited me to her house, and she offered me a drink of water. And then as I got talking to her, I found out that almost all her belongings were in the water, or the fridge, all the white goods had just floated away. It was just herself and one other child who was living in that place. And I asked her, I said, have you ever thought of moving out now that we've had the floods? And what she said really struck me, because she said, why should I? Because this is where I've always lived, and this is the only place I know. And she says, I've lived here for so long, and nothing like this has ever happened. And so I don't have any plans of moving out. Of course, the floods of 2015 were unprecedented. They said it's, we've never had rains that heavy in about 100 years. But the floods that happened in 1943 were truly epic, because I believe it rained for 6 days continuously. And they literally had to put, install pumps near the mouth of the Coombe and clean up that sandbar, because the Coombe got very, very badly affected in the 1943 floods. So I think in 2015 we only had about 3 days of rain, and we found ourselves in such a mess. So like I was saying, there are a lot of encroachers who just refuse to move out because they've just gotten comfortable. They are near a water source. They can access the water for washing and cleaning, and they use it for all their morning ablutions. And as long as nobody disturbs them, they don't see any reason why they should move out. And the government it's not very easy for the government to evict them, because it's a vote back. Now in Chetpet, many of the people along the Coombe, including my maid, have all been offered houses they've been given houses in Chemmanjeri, and which is very close to Chetnad Hospital. But none of them live there, because their profession, their work is here in Chetpet, and they just don't find the kind of jobs that they are doing here back there in Chemmanjeri. So they've cleverly either just put their household effects there, or they've rented out the homes there, and they continue to live where they've always lived. So encroachers are very, very difficult to evict or to persuade them to relocate to any other place. The other trick that happens is people start using the lake bed as a landfill. Now this I have seen in ever so many areas. If you go to the Puraleri, the moment you step out of your vehicle, the first thing that greets you is a huge mound of garbage that has, it's been there for so long that it has nicely caked up. And one would think that why would, such a humongous mound of garbage find its place just near a drinking water source? I don't think anybody, a lot of VIPs came and visited all our reservoirs. I don't think any action was taken, because that mound didn't, the height of the mound did not decrease very much even during subsequent visits. So converting the lake beds into landfills is a very, very common strategy. I saw this in Sithalapakam also. They have a lovely area, they have a nice walkway. The Residents Association has started a reading room there. It's called the Abdul Kalam reading room, and they meet regularly. And just adjoining the lake is another landfill. And I asked them, how did you permit this? And they told me that they've taken it up with the National Green Tribunal, and that they've not been able to, do anything about it. So converting lakes into landfills, even if it's a small, small area. In Ambattur again, I saw 2 lakes, two house owners with a lake in between, and this place in the lake in between was steadily getting filled up. And so when we stopped to take pictures, it was a huge amount of garbage with all pigs and dogs and all kinds of animals scrounging there, and there was a little girl also trying to see what she could pick out of that. And a passerby stopped and asked us why we were taking photos, and we said, I mean, we just wanted to, depict how this lake is being used as a landfill. And he said it's a strategy by one of the people who live on the other side of the lake, because the idea is to lock it, I believe. And how does he lock it? He just keeps dumping garbage in that over the lake, and after a point it becomes unusable, and so he can get rid of the other person on the other side much more easily. So these are the strategies that people have been using. The other strategy is to convert the land and reclassify it. Now, for instance, the Pallikarnai marsh, it's been reclassified as wasteland. It is actually a wetland, and it's one of the only one of its kind in the city of Chennai. And if you take South India, you have Point Calumet and Kariveli and two other places, but it's the only one of its kind in Chennai. And the marshland serves a very great purpose, because it's fed by water from the Velachery tank and several, more than 20 tanks in that vicinity, and the marshlands act like a sponge. So they just absorb. It's not like a drain where you pour water and it just drains out. It's like a sponge, and the water just collects there and it slowly releases it. I believe long back, when Chennai was a nice green place full of rice fields and a lot of plantations and all of that, when it was a much more beautiful city, there was not a single well or pond in that area, because the water from this marshland was enough to irrigate the place. And of course, it's home to several migratory birds, like the pelican and the heron, and it is said that there were more birds than in Vedandangal at one point. But today the marshland, has been badly compromised by all manner of construction. There are institutes, there is housing, there is a sewage treatment plant not far off, and so Pallikarnai is really shrunk very vastly. Now the activists have been screaming themselves hoarse for a long time, but slowly things are, at least they are trying to save whatever they have and get the corporation to hand over some of the land to the reserve, to the forest area, so that they could preserve this marshland. And the marshlands, as you know, are a definite flood mitigator, especially for those areas like Tambaram, Velachery, Peruvudi, all the areas around Pallikarnai will definitely benefit if Pallikarnai is saved and given a new lease of life. So how much time do we have? Yeah, almost done. So I'll just quickly wrap up by telling you what is it that you and I can do as average citizens. Of course, we're not going to be able to handle the encroachers, or we are not the government, so we can't play those roles. But where we can, use our strength is social media. For instance, in the Periyakulam Lake in Trichy, when an activist, very recently, he saw bulldozers and excavators all coming to the Periyakulam Lake and leveling up the land. His antenna was on the alert, and he quickly filed a petition, and he found that they were getting ready to create housing for the members of the Trichy Press Club. But this despite the fact that the Supreme Court had ruled that there was no construction to happen over a lake as far back as in 2005. So he effectively stalled the damage there. So as citizens, we definitely have to be alert, and there is strength in numbers, and we just have to use the power of social media and whatever else that we have at our disposal to bring these atrocities to the notice of the powers that be. I would urge all of you to visit lakes whenever you can. Surely there is a lake in your vicinity or nearby that you could visit, or maybe you should even have a meeting sometimes near the Chetpet Lake. The spur tank, that again was one of the biggest tanks in Chennai, but it was shaped like a spur, and that had to make way for the Kilpauk Medical College Hospital. And then what little was left of it was the Chetpet Lake, and now it's been given a new lease of life. There's boating, there's a walkway, and there's a lot of eat-outs and all that, and there's even a nice stage where you can have your meetings. So maybe you should, take the children on a family meet or something to these lakes. Sittalapakam Lake, they have this reading room. There's a very active residents association. Where the Madipakam Lake is dirty. The water is dark, and all kinds of plastic bottles and stuff are floating on it. The Lions Club has stepped in there, and they've created a nice path around which to walk, and they put these park benches. So there are lots of things that we can do to support NGOs that are already working in the area. There is one NGO called Care Earth Trust, which is doing a lot of research and advocacy, and even Niral, which works with, which is involved in the greening of the city, does a weekly Shramdan near the Sittalapakam Lake, where they are actually planting trees on the tank bunds. So either you make films. I know you have experts from the ad industry. You can make short films on these lakes and bring the state of the lakes to the notice of the people. Try and invite. Anything tokenistic should be avoided. People do go and clean up lakes and all that, but it shouldn't be a one-off thing. It should be something sustainable. Only then it's going to have any kind of long-term durable impact. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. Actually, if I was looking through several reports that have been published over the years that the government has got experts from A.R. Venkatachari, engineer A.R. Venkatachari, from his times in 1943. Several committees have been formed, and they've all listed out all the possible steps that we need to save the water bodies. It's all there on paper. The only thing is none of it has been implemented. So I think we cannot wait for the government any longer, because the government is, as far as my experience goes, the government is seriously understaffed. Whether it's your telephone department or whether it's your metro water or corporation, there are no staff members there. All the jobs, even if you apply for a new connection, you can see how things work, because they just don't have the manpower. It's all outsourced. So it is whenever the laborers are available that the job is done, whether a road cut or relaying of the pipe or whatever. So I think the best thing would be for us is to connect with NGOs who already have done the groundwork and who know the things, and who work with the residents, because unless you have a local support, it is just not going to make any impact. I'll just take 1 minute to tell you about temple tanks, and we also must remember that these temple tanks too serve a very, very important purpose in recharging ground water. And the Mylapore areas, many areas in Mylapore did not get flooded at all because of the effectiveness of the Mylapore tank. And I don't know how many of you know that the land for the Mylapore tank was donated by the Nawab of the Carnatic. So every year on the day of Muharram, Muslims too are allowed to bathe in the tank. So there is another very beautiful tank that I saw, the Kovil Padagai tank near the ordnance factory in Avadi. It is near the Sundaraja Perumal temple. It was such a serene, peaceful, beautiful tank, one of the best tanks that I have seen in the city. Again, it might defy common sense, but tanks in Georgetown, like the Kandaswamy temple tank, have never gone dry. You know, it's in such a congested area, Rasappa Chetty Street in Georgetown, but these tanks have never ever gone dry. So temple tanks too are a very important feature in all of our water bodies. There are drains and canals. All our canals are disappearing. Whenever development happens, there's no consideration, no thought about hydrology and urban planning, as a result of which the Buckingham Canal, after the MRTS came up, about 1.5 kilometers of the Buckingham Canal is clearly not navigable anymore. So many of our drains and canals have all disappeared, and those are all the reasons, along with the disappearance of the lakes, that actually led to our floods. So I just like to conclude by saying we have no time to lose, and we simply must act. So in whatever way you can, whether it's by supporting the NGOs or going and visiting the lakes, because once you do that, then you can see for yourself, and then you will, there will be a greater, pull and a desire to make a difference. We just have to act, and act very fast. Thank you very much.
Questions, please.
Arun Krishnamurthy
yes.
does a lot of work on
Environmentalist Foundation.
cleaning up.
Yes.
He's able to do it with schoolboys.
With volunteers, he's organizing cleanups in several of the lakes, Arasankarani and Perumbakam and all those little known lakes. And he's also doing cleanups outside of Chennai. And he's made a couple of films. I think one was screened at the British Council. So that is another NGO that is working apart from Liral. And there is Arapo Riyakam, which is also a recent entrant.
See, you spoke about Korattur Eri and then Purel Eri.
Yes.
There is a place called Rotary.
Ah, yes, Rotary. Yes.
Have you been able
Yes.
to see a lake there?
Yes.
You've seen a lake there?
Yes.
Oh, that's surprising.
I saw a man driving a toy boat in Rotary. And there were several tanks south of Rotary, I believe, which have all disappeared. And there is a Rotary hospital also in Kolattur.
The name of the bus stop is Rotary, but I've never seen the lakes.
No, there is a Rotary hospital. The next time you go, please, look out for that hospital.
How long have you been studying water bodies?
Since Jan of this year, Mr. Madhu. So after I wrote that article, like I said in my piece, it's changed me as a person. So whenever I see a lake, I sort of get excited, and even when I was coming back from Pune via air as I was doing this story, and I had a window seat fortunately, and the first thing I was looking out for were signs of water. So I think it gets you hooked once you start.
In Coimbatore, you got the ocean example of Chiruduli.
Yes. Yes. Correct. I think the best efforts come from NGOs and private citizens.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for your time. And be rest assured, the promoters and builders of RCMS will not cause any chaos. I request Rotarian Josh to give away the momentum.
My apologies, if I touched a wrong.
Thank you very much, ma'am.
Friends, on account of the family participation on Sunday, we will not have a meeting next week. Request Rotarian Madhu to deliver the vote of thanks.
I think we take water for granted unless there's not enough water or unless there's too much water. So either we suffer from a drought or from floods, and then we get agitated and the government starts acting. But I think most of us are guilty either of passive indifference or of active distraction. And but one person who has not been indifferent is Sudha Umashankar, and I admire the zeal with which she has been pursuing water bodies, and I envy her knowledge of Madras. Many of the places she mentioned I have never been to. So we need many Sudha Umashankars and many Arun Krishnamurtis to make a difference. And thank you very much for an informative, awareness-raising talk, and I hope we'll be able to say that it has also been an action-stimulating talk. Thank you, Rosana.
Meeting is adjourned.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Very proudly
Yeah.